Thanks for coming. This is very exciting to see so many people interested in this issue, and there's been some real progress lately, and this discussion I think is going to be very informative because it's not just the West Coast, it's also Texas. So I'd like to invite our panelists up now. Take your seats. We want to begin with a summary of our last episode, for those of you who were not here, when we focused on the problem in this particular area. And I'll introduce everybody as we start talking with them. So let's begin with Barb Poppe, our most famous homelessness consultant. And we just got an assessment, a pretty extensive assessment of who's homeless and why. And just the appendix is something like 25 pages long. And I've perused it, but I was hoping you could help us focus on what you think are the most important findings of that report.
Great. Well, good morning. It's lovely to be with you. And I knew I was in trouble this morning as I'm trying to get here. I'm a little bit late, and I stop at the corner to wait for the light, and the person next to me, Susan, who's here, who I had not met, says, "I know where you're going." And I thought, oh no, I really am in trouble. But it is. It's good to be here with all of you. I do hail from Columbus, Ohio, and but I do get to spend a lot of time here with you in Seattle and talking with folks from Seattle and King County, probably on a weekly basis. I'm kind of stayed in touch here. I think the last time we talked about the complexity of homelessness and what is being done by the city at the street level, and I think George Garola is here, and he talked a lot about street disorder. But one of the things he promised was that the city was going to publish a survey and interviews that had been done with people who were directly experiencing homelessness to really get to a deeper understanding of it. I see George over there finally, so there's George over there. But it was really remarkable information because it's quite different than the one-night count, which I think most of you are familiar with, happens once a year, and it just tallies the number of people that are believed to be homeless and outside. But this did actual interviews and focus groups. And what they found were that 70% of the people said that their last permanent residence was actually here in Seattle and King County. So it really is a homegrown population. And of those, half had lived here for 5 years or more. So, and I think like 30% had been here 10 years or more. So it's a fairly non-transient population if you think about the number of people who are kind of moving in and out of your community who aren't experiencing homelessness. 93% said that if they were offered a safe, decent, affordable place to stay, they would move off the streets. I think this flies in the face of the belief that folks don't want to leave homelessness, but 93% said, yes, I would move. 28% of those who are staying outdoors in your community are 30 years and younger. Just let that sink in. That is your future. That's your talent. And 28% are outside. And just, I don't know, it just sends shivers through I mean, I've got kids. I've got a 30-year-old and a 22-year-old, and thinking about them being outside is it's really scary. So I think that's, I don't know, it's a sobering statistic. And then the final one I picked out was that when they asked about, like, why did you become homeless? What caused this? The vast majority had experienced a job loss or a loss of housing. So very much, and they're certainly interrelated. Lose a job, lose a housing, lose your housing, lose your job. I think as many of you have probably read or heard about Matthew Desmond's book, Evicted. And one of the points he makes is that eviction is both a cause and a consequence of poverty. So that losing your housing more often ties to losing your job than you would expect. So anyway, so I think it's interesting that you found those to be true here. I'm really excited to turn this back to Dave and let him introduce these three fabulous panelists. I'm huge fans of the work that they do and can't wait to hear what they have to say.
Is it also true, though, I noticed in one chart that about 30% could afford a rent of $500 or more a month?
Yes, there was a significant percentage that actually had enough money if they could find a place to stay. Now, you know, the question gets to be, how can you provide a place to stay for $500 a month or less, which tends to be about what an operating cost. So even if there's no debt on the building, it's still
Right.
it's still a challenge, but it's possible. And I think that's why, like, more than 90% say they'd move to an apartment.